So let's get started with just making a singular 8-bar MIDI clip right here. Yeah, I've already got like a drum beat sort of set out, and all that's missing is like a main element which is going to be provided with these chords right here. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm in the key of B flat major, which the key altogether is B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, and B flat again. And so generally I like to start on the tonic. Definitely not always a good idea, but for this chord progression I will, just because like sometimes if you're in a key then it is quite good to start on somewhere else on the tonic just to make it more interesting. But for now we're just going to stick to making a chord progression which starts on B flat major, which is just called a triad. So instead of making just a simple 4-chord loop, which a lot of people do, I sort of want to make maybe a couple more chords in progression. So we're going to keep this as that, and then I'm thinking of making a descending sort of chord progression for this first bit. So this chord here is a C minor chord, which is a C, an E flat, and a G, and then it'll descend to a G minor chord, which is a G, a B flat, and a D. So it sounds like this. This little chord here is sort of like a transition chord going from this chord to this, just as like a nice little placeholder. So now that we got this chord sorted out, I sort of want to return to the B flat major chord, so let's paste that in here. We'll put an octave down just to make some variation, and we're going to move it in here and treat it as another transition chord like this one. So that's going to go there, and then I'm thinking the final chord we could end on the 4th, which is an E flat, and then ending on the 4th of the scale means that we'll have a plagal cadence, which basically technical terms for a cadence ending on a 4 chord to the tonic, 4 to 1, which is called a plagal cadence. So that you don't really need to know that, but it's just nice to know some technical terms. Like for example, going from an F major to a B flat major is called a perfect cadence, and there are some other types of cadences such as like imperfect cadences, like going from 5 to the 6th chord, etc. But we don't really need to know that for this sort of chord progression. So I'm thinking of ending on an E flat major chord. So let's see what that sounds like. So that sounds pretty good. I'm just going to repeat this and see what that sounds like. Yeah, so I think that's our chord progression that we have there. It's not too difficult, it's a pretty simple one. All this is a 1, 2, 6, 4, basically. 1, 2, 6, 4. Yeah, so these chords on its own, they do sound pretty good, but they definitely can sound a lot better. So after you got your triads all written out in root form, this is all in root form by the way. So this is where there are no inversions, they're all just 1, 3, and 5 basic triads. But what we can do is we can start making inversions to make these really interesting. All you need to do is really take the top note of your chord, or one of the top or bottom note of these chords, and move them down or up an octave. So for example, for this first chord here, I'm going to take this and then move it down an octave. And for the second chord, I'm going to take this and move it down an octave. This is called a B flat major second inversion. Now if I were to put this back up and instead put the B flat on top, or this will be a B flat major first inversion where we have the B on top. But I'm going to make a second inversion just to make it a bit interesting, and I've also made this a second inversion, and let's see how that sounds. but I think I do like it just in root form for now. And this is the thing, like you can get a bit too complicated with some inversions, and sometimes it is just better to keep it simple in root form. So one thing that I noticed about this chord going to this chord is that there's a massive jump between the notes. Like it's moving from one octave on the keyboard down to another octave on the keyboard. So I want to combat that by moving the B flat up an octave. And there, as you can see, that the movement is way more smooth. These notes are all in the same octave as this one pretty much, and it's just way tidier. Let's do the same with this one. So one thing that I like to do when I sort of make inversions is I like to add a top note to some of these chords. And since I sacrificed the G on the bottom, I wanted to put another one on top just as like a placeholder there. So as you'll be able to hear, it sounds a bit better. So that makes it sound just a bit better. So one other thing that I noticed about this chord here, it sounds good with this D natural actually on top. So now that I moved that up to the top, I think the whole chord progression so far with the inversions is sounding really nice. So basically I want to make some bass notes to really fill out the low end of this piano. And one thing that you can do is you can duplicate the bottom note and then move that down to the bottom, just an octave down. So that sounds like this. So for this chord here, since even though the bottom note here is a G, I know that it's a C minor chord. I want the root note of it still to be a C, just to keep the actual progression of the bass sort of following the root form of the actual chord whilst playing a different form of it on top. So now that I got my bass notes layered down, it all sounds like this now. So yeah, that's actually sounding quite good already. With the inversions, you can definitely hear the difference between the normal chord progression and what it is now. So that definitely sounds a lot better. But one thing that I can do is I can start raising notes or lowering notes in the scale in the chords to fit the scale to create sort of different harmonics all over the keyboard. So this chord here, I feel like it could do with a 7th on top. So that would just be a duplicated D here. So if I were to make a D here and also here, since it's the same chord, then that's basically playing an E flat major 7 where it has the 7th note of the major scale. And let's see how that sounds. So now that I've added that 7th, this progression towards the end is getting a bit too straight, and that you'll see that the chords, even though they move smoothly, which is a good thing by the way, if your chords move smoothly between intervals, like that's how if there's only a full step down from an F to a D sharp, or just a smooth step from a D to another D, or an A sharp to another A sharp, then that's a good thing, because that means that your chords will move smoothly down the scale and that it will just sound a lot better than jumping all over the keyboard. These notes here, these 4 notes here, playing over 3 different chords, I really want some different sort of textures in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a D sharp on top of this major 7 chord, and this one too. So these 2 notes here are actually a minor 2nd interval, which sound quite bad on their own, since they're 2 semitones away from each other. But if you combine them in chords in the right way, then they actually sound like quite nice. So you'll hear it here. And now, since this is an actual song that I'm working on, it sounds like this. So the key thing sort of here that after you lay down like a good chord progression, then coming up with song ideas and everything is just so much easier. And if you have a chord progression, then you can even like improvise over it. Like I improvised this little piano line that I did, which sounds like this. Like obviously that would be a different sound, but like having a chord progression and laying it down really gives you like a full structure to the song, and you can really start messing around with lots of other elements. So getting a good chord progression down is pretty key. So that's basically that for this video. So yeah, remember the main parts of this is to invert these chords and really just like experiment is sort of the main thing. Like adding these like little notes here, like those two notes on themselves sound quite bad, but if you really added in a nice chord, then it can just add like that little layer of harmonics that sound really nice. But yeah, so I believe the most important thing about like chord progressions or literally just music in general is just being creative and expressing yourself as much as possible through what you write. And this is sort of a good way to do it is by laying down these progressions and then sort of experimenting with them and seeing like what else you can do alongside them. But yeah, so that'll pretty much be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something. And yeah.